everybody, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I would like to sort of revisit the Qor Watercolors. So I recently did a review on my channel, and I'll leave it linked up in the description box and in the iCards if you're interested. But I wanted to do kind of a little follow-up, update you, so that you could see how I was getting along with the watercolors. And I sat down to do this little study of a Pear still life, and I thought it would be fun to turn it into a quick and easy tutorial for you guys. So I started off with some masking fluid. I just masked off the basic highlights that were on the Pear, and I began to drop in some of the local colors that I saw represented within the Pear. Now the Qor watercolors flow beautifully. They bloom instantly, wet into wet. And they sort of have this signature cauliflower bloom texture that I was able to replicate over and over and over again, even in swatches, even wet on dry. It always sort of wants to bloom on you. I did find that I could go in there with a damp brush while the paper was still wet, in those wet into wet washes, and just sort of soften that out before the paint had a chance to dry if I didn't want to have that cauliflower effect. And that did seem to help to correct that when I didn't want it. I couldn't eliminate it all together because it's just the nature of those paints. It wanted to do that, but I was able to definitely minimize the appearance and soften it out quite a bit. So they blended beautifully. I am still using just the colors from my high chroma set, but as you can see on the very top of the page, I had swatched out the colors that I was going to use ahead of time. I'm using the Quin Gold, Transparent Pyrrol Orange, Quin Magenta, and between those two I was able to mix a sort of warm red color, the ultramarine violet, the dioxazine violet, and then the green gold. And somewhere in between those shades there, I was able to mix a sort of brown sepia tone, which worked really well for the shadow areas underneath the Pear and for the brown spots on the Pear itself, and of course the stem. After that, the paint had thoroughly dried, I went in to work on the shadow underneath the Pear. I went in with some of that pure purple at first so that the shadow would be nice and chromatic, and then I went over with my mixed sepia tone. I used a little bit of a different technique with these because I wanted to avoid that same situation with the cauliflower bloom on the shadow area. I actually went in wet on dry initially, and then I came in, I rolled over with a damp brush to soften the edge afterwards. So usually I would wet the area out when I was doing a shadow, but I switched it up and adjusted my technique a little bit so that it would be more suited to this paint. And then I went in on the Pear itself and I tried to get in some more dimension and add some of the more basic shapes that I saw. One thing that I noticed about this paint is that it does stain the paper really, really quickly. So you can come in and blend, like if you put a layer down and you want to soften it out with a damp brush to soften that edge, you can do it, but you have to do it right away. And I mean right away, because if you let it sit there for even just a couple seconds and then you come back, it's already stained and you've got a hard line. So that was something that I wasn't fully anticipating when I was working on this Pear, but if I was working with another brand, like for example Winsor & Newton or Daniel Smith, I would have been able to have more time to blend. But never the matter, I was still happy with how it came out and it was still fine. But definitely don't block in a lot of shapes at one time and then come back, you know, do multiple things at once. Make sure you do one thing at one time and come in and blend as you go, and blend quickly if you want to blend that paint wet on dry. I went in, I just added a few more glazes to bring out some luminosity and vibrancy to the Pear. The Qor watercolors really do glaze beautifully. They work great. They don't start lifting back up like some other brands sometimes can do. I've had that happen. But I think the Pear just came out beautiful. It glowed. It had a gorgeous luminosity to it. And I was really, really happy with how these paints performed overall. And I felt like I had a lot of control with these paints. So, oh, and another really big bonus that I think I forgot to mention in my review is that the tin doesn't stain. Like, I was able to use it as a palette and the metal did not stain. So I was really, really pleased with that as well. So after I had allowed all those glaze layers to dry, I had removed the masking fluid and I came in with a synthetic filbert and I started to lift out areas where I wanted softer highlights, and also to sort of soften the hard edges of those bright white highlights into the image a little bit more, just so that I would have a little bit more of a natural appearance to the pear, and once again adding a little bit more shape and dimension. I then went in with that mixed sepia tone that I had mixed from the violet, the gold, and the green, and I went in with a small round and I just started making little dots and dashes to make the speckles on the pear, and I would come in with my finger and I would sort of tap over it to soften it so it would look more natural, and I'd get a more uniform, more random pattern that way, because my finger would pick up some paint obviously and start depositing little speckles too, and so that way it would be more natural and it wouldn't look like I had planned it. You know, all the little dots wouldn't be lined up like little toy soldiers. They'd be much more random. And that pretty much wraps up this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Just a quick and easy little pear still life. I hope you found this video helpful and enjoyable. If you did, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe before you go. It really helps out my channel. Leave me some comments, and as always, have a great day, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.